Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining for my YouTube live. It's also on X and Facebook. Thank you all for joining. This is for June 26, 2024. So thank you all very much for joining. It's great to see you all. It's been a few weeks since I was able to do one of these just because I was traveling for work and conferences. I was speaking at a few conferences. One was at a medical conference in London, the Public Health Collaboration in London. And then I was speaking in Texas at Austin, and then over to Switzerland. That was a really interesting one in Switzerland. I was in St. Moritz, which is absolutely stunning. I haven't been out up into the Alps in Switzerland before, and so that was a very special treat to get out there. And it was a wonderful conference as well. That was the Keto Live conference and the Keto Live Sports conference are sort of back to back, and so. There's a sports medicine conference that I spoke at, and then the rest of it was after that was on a lot of other more general subjects, and each day had a theme like cancer or diabetes, those sorts of things. And they were excellent. Had some excellent speakers from all over the world, and they do this every year. I think this was the 4th annual event, and so if people are available next year, and it's going to be in St. Moritz again. It's absolutely stunning location, and it's a fantastic conference. And we got to go, we had like walks out with different presenters, and we'd go and everyone would talk and get out in the mountain air and walk around the lake and things like that. It was absolutely fantastic. And the public health collaboration as well is around the same time, and I think they're going to sort of try to piggyback on each other, like one after the other, to make it easier for people. Like for me, I had to go to London and then back to Australia and then over to America and then back to Switzerland. It would be nice to just be London, Switzerland. And so I think they're going to try to coordinate with each other next year as well. So, and that's a fantastic conference also. That was this time in London, but it can happen at other areas in the UK. Last year was Sheffield, I think, and then this year was in London. So those are all fantastic conferences. They are eligible for CME credits. So for doctors and clinicians and practitioners, medical practitioners, you get continuing medical education or professional development points as well for that. So it's definitely worth checking out. So there are a couple super chats and things like that have sort of come up, and previous ones that came up on some previous premieres and things like that have just sort of built up that we've kept track of. Can't keep track of everything, unfortunately, but we're able to keep track of some of these. So I'm going to go through some of them. So, and some of the super chats actually came in overnight since I posted this, and so we'll start with those first and we'll go through them. I have about an hour, so I'm going to go through as many questions as I can, but we already have like 16 already. So we'll do the best we can, and may have to sort of cut off the super chats at a certain point, and so that we can try to get through all of them. So we'll get going anyway. So first question is from Ellie. Ellie, thank you for the super chat. Ellie says, I eat only beef, but grass-fed here is very expensive and limited selection. Is it bad to eat almost all grain-fed? Thank you again. No, not at all. It's absolutely fantastic. It's very, very good for you. It's very nutritious. It's way more nutritious than anything else you're going to eat. And so, no, that's perfectly fine. I mean, for years and years and years, I was eating predominantly grain finished, just Costco beef, because that's what I had access to. That was what was convenient. I could get it in bulk. It was cheap and very good quality. So no, that's perfectly fine. It objectively has less micronutrients and a different omega-3 to omega-6 profile than grass-fed and finished beef. However, it is still far more nutritious than basically anything else you're going to eat. So it is, it's not as nutritious, but it is extremely nutritious. It's more nutritious than basically anything else. So no, that's perfectly fine. You don't need to break the bank. This isn't just for the elite. If you need just ground beef, ground pork, ground chicken, eggs, these sorts of things, these are very cheap. They're very inexpensive. They're very good for you, and they're perfectly good options. Brisket, one of the cheapest cuts, also one of the best. Has great fat content, great nutrition as well. And even grass-fed and finished brisket is not all that much more expensive than grain-finished brisket, and is very affordable, very good for you. So it's but no, that's totally fine. If grain finish is what you have access to, then go for it. It's the not eating all the other things that's what makes the biggest difference. Another question from Ellie. Thank you again. Ellie says, if it's the same Ellie, same spelling anyway. Thank you in any case. I want to use butter, but I'm afraid of not knowing how much of it to eat and dairy being addictive. Is it healthier to get fat from meat? Thank you. Well, grass-fed butter is very, very good, and most people will do just fine with it. I don't think you have to worry too much about it. Some people, may do better without butter, but most people do just fine. And it can be a good way of getting fat. Getting the fat from the meat is typically great. But if you're doing grain finished beef, the fat's not going to have as much omega-3 like DHA and EPA as it would if it was grass-fed and finished. And so butter actually has a very good omega-3 to omega-6 profile. So that's actually not a bad idea to add that in if you're not getting any grass-fed fat as well, because you'll get more omega-3s and DHA and EPA. Also, it's possible to get fat trimmings from the butcher. It's generally pretty cheap, and accessible. And so, especially if you can get grass-fed and finished fat trimmings, and they're usually pretty dark yellow, then that's fantastic. That's really the best thing you can do. You cut those into little chunks and you fry those up in a pan, and it's absolutely fantastic. So those are good options as well. I'm just gonna just open the door, let my cat's bugging me to let him out. Just 1 second. Okay. All right. So sorry about that. So there's a super chat from Changle Thomas Jones. Thank you very much for that. It doesn't look like there's a question, but maybe there's one down the chain. Dominikos Dracos. I'm gonna go out on a limb and guess. They say, well, first of all, thank you for the super chat. Mr. Draco says, I'm a 17-year-old male, a few months until 18. Can I grow taller on carnivore? If so, how can I maximize my growth? Do you get explosive diarrhea first week or two on carnivore? Well, it depends. If your growth plates are open, then you can grow. It just depends. So most people's growth plates will still be open at 17, 18 years old. However, some people do close off. And so it just depends on the individual. But I mean, there are people that switch to carnivore at 21 and grow significantly. I mean, there are people in university, college, and things like that do grow and continue to grow. So their growth plates are still open. So that's pretty lucky, but it's absolutely something that happens. I had a friend of mine that happened to, grew like 5 inches in college and went from being a great football player to an amazing football player to like a Pro Bowl football player. So it's fully possible. Explosive diarrhea for the first week or two, some people do, some people don't. If you're drinking coffee or tea taking magnesium, using artificial sweeteners, things like that, you will exponentially increase your chances of having explosive diarrhea, because they're all laxatives. Those are all laxatives. So if you're only eating meat, you're only drinking water, it's much less likely, especially if you get the fat balance right. So you need enough fat. You want to aim for about, like a ribeye steak is about as much fat as you want. And, you're paying, your super chat was in pounds. So, in England, they may not have ribeye as much as like Scotch fillet, which will have a lot of the fat trimmed off. So that's actually not as much fat as you want. Remember that diarrhea is sort of a U-shaped curve with fat. So if you eat too little fat, you can get liquid diarrhea, and then you sort of get enough, and then everything's sort of normal, and then you get too much, and you get liquid diarrhea, and you get diarrhea again. So just remember that. Keep that in mind. Cut out the coffee, tea, magnesium supplements, and artificial sweeteners for sure. Even in gum, like sugar-free gum, like all that sort of stuff, that can all cause diarrhea, especially when you cut out fiber. Otherwise, sometimes people get some loose stools for a while, but it's typically in the people that still drink coffee. That's the most common time I see that. So another super chat from Dracos. Thank you very much. I heard you need 8 to 10,000 IUs of vitamin D3 for optimal blood levels. Is this true on carnivore? Is carnivore suitable for sedentary people? It is absolutely suitable for sedentary people and everybody. Just like grass is still good for, cows in a pen, or, hay is good for, or whatever, hay, whatever the hell they feed zebras in the zoo, probably hay. Is good for zebras in captivity, and meat is still good for lions in captivity. Nutrition is nutrition. It's the right nutrition for your species or not. And if you're active or inactive, it just changes the amount that you require and that you need. So yes, if you're sedentary, it's still just as important to get the right food. And in fact, it's more important, because if you're sedentary, you can't offset your crappy diet by exercising, and at least using some of that energy so it doesn't get stored into fat, and trying to build some muscle and stay fit, and at least pretending that what you're doing is healthy. If you're sedentary, then it's all going to go to rack and ruin. So it's even more important for sedentary people to be on a proper human diet. As far as vitamin D3, that is a typical supplementary dose that people would take to supplement vitamin D3. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to have that all the time, but to catch up, to get into a better level, that is a typical dose that people go on if they're deficient and they're trying to go up. Vitamin D3 in supplement form seems to be a different kind of vitamin D. It's strange. It's not quite what we make when we're exposed to sun, or what we get from food. And so that's actually important. So you really want to get your vitamin D3 from animal fat. If you're very low, sure, top it up on supplements. But there are some studies showing that getting people's vitamin D levels up higher with supplements isn't as beneficial as one would expect, and it doesn't seem to be as beneficial as just people who naturally have higher levels of vitamin D3. So, and that could be because of the different kind of vitamin D3 that you get from supplements versus from food and from being out in the sun. So that's your first port of call is, get out in the sun. Don't use sunscreen really. Tallow as skin moisturizer is very good for you. If you're on a carnivore diet, you typically don't burn. You may get red, but that redness typically doesn't peel unless you really overdo it. You can overdo it, so don't overdo it. But as long as you're not peeling, you're pretty much okay. And then, get sun exposure. Try to get out in the sun, at least, for 30, 40 minutes a day. It's actually just really good for you for a lot of different reasons. And, try to get your shirt off and get out in the sun, especially now in the summer months in England. That's really important to get sun on your skin. It's not just good for vitamin D. It's good for nitric oxide. It's good for your mitochondria. It's good for um, uh, your um, your cardiometabolic system. It's just actually is very beneficial to be out in the sun. So very good things. And you get the vitamin D. But I would try to get this from your food as well. I try to get this from animal fat, from grass-fed butter, things like that, grass-fed beef fat, those sorts of things. It's a fat-soluble vitamin. It comes in the fat. So, you need to eat the fat as well. If you're very low, in England, if I'm not mistaken on the units in England, you want to be between 140 and 180 on your vitamin D. So just check that. And, if you're down well below 100, maybe think about using a supplement, but definitely think about upping your animal fat and getting out in the sun. It's very important. Beth Rademacher, thank you very much for the super chat. Beth says, nice to see you back. Well, thank you very much. It's nice to be back. Are eggs as good as meat, or is meat alone the ideal? I know eggs have carbs. So do you have to limit them? Thank you as always. No, I think eggs are honorary meat. They have all the nutrients and precursors that then turn into meat, turn into chickens. So it's actually absolutely fantastic. Pasture raised eggs are far more nutritious than normal, grain-fed, factory-farmed eggs. They have way more micronutrients, so they're going to be much more healthy. And that's if they're actually pasture raised and actually out there eating bugs and not just being fed a whole bunch of corn and soy and garbage like that. You can't really tell one way or the other, unfortunately, but if they're eating what they're supposed to eat, they're going to get the nutrients that they're supposed to have, and they're going to be much more nutritious for you as well. So but no, eggs are great. Some people do react negatively to eggs, especially like the egg whites. Some people have a problem with. So if that's you, then you avoid them. But if you do well with them and you feel great, then go to town on eggs. Those are great. So getting into some of the stored questions. From Sibby. Sibby had an earlier question. Dr. Chaffy, as I'm in the UK, so won't watch this live, which is more nutritious, butter, ghee, or tallow? Grass-fed tallow, I'd say, is your pinnacle. And then grass-fed ghee, grass-fed butter. It's not that grass-fed ghee is necessarily more nutritious than grass-fed butter, but it can just be less of a problem and just more suitable for more people, because the proteins and milk solids in butter seem to be a problem for some people. Most people actually do fine with them, but ghee, just less people are going to have a problem with that. So, but as far as the nutrient content is concerned, I think grass-fed tallow is grass-fed finished tallow, so it needs to be yellow. If it doesn't have a yellow tinge, probably not grass-finished. That would be, I think, the best. Yeah. And then this was a very generous super chat from Stink Ass Cat, and who did this on a premiere the other day, or last month in May. And I haven't had a live since then, so I haven't been able to thank him or her. And so thank you very much for that. It says hardcore carnivore is the only way. Well, thank you very much for a very generous super chat, and also for just being a very, very supportive member of the group. Stink often will post very nice comments and super chats, and even just to say thank you and keep up the good work and all that sort of stuff. So I really appreciate that. I really appreciate the support and appreciate you being here. And I'm glad that things are going well, and I'm glad that you're doing well also. Okay. Actually, no, this is a two-part question or comment, really, from BM7888. Dr. Chaffy, and you saved and you all saved my dad's life. Well, that's amazing. I'm very sorry he was sick in the first place, but I'm very glad to hear that it sounds like he's doing better. I wouldn't have I wouldn't have been able to do so. Wouldn't have been able to without your support. Deeply grateful. It's been around 2 weeks since I started slowly feeding my dad meat. Continues on here, and he is now down to half insulin. That's amazing. How amazing. His kidney toxicity is way down too. I can't believe how fast the results are coming. He's 80 years old. Well, that's amazing. I'm really, really glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that he's doing so well. Hopefully, he just continues to do better and better and better. This was something that Melissa was telling me, that unfortunately her father was in the hospital and very, very sick, and she was able to get him eating meat, and they, weren't really optimistic with how he was doing, but now he's home and he's doing better, which is amazing. So that's really, really good to hear. And, thank you for sharing that with us. Something very personal like that is not always easy to share in groups. And so thank you for that. I'm really glad to hear that your dad's doing better. Random Adventures 2.0. Thank you for being such an inspiration. I started carnivore 53 days ago, got my blood work results today, and my A1C went from 11.8 down to 7. That's amazing. That's with no meds in 8 weeks. Well, that's really incredible. So it's always good to see great results like that. And that's pretty typical. That's just what happens. I mean, diabetes is not a disease. It's basically carbohydrate poisoning and just, bad food poisoning, because, seed oils and other sorts of things seem to cause more insulin resistance as well. It's very funny when people say that there's actually meat and fat that cause insulin resistance. I mean, eating fat has absolutely zero effect on your insulin. So that's out. And and then people are going on a meat and high fat meat only diet, and their diabetes goes away. So obviously it's not the meat or the fat that's causing the diabetes, clearly. But they still clutch to these crazy ideas, even though they go completely against just the observed phenomena. You're just looking at something that happened, and you're saying like, wow, all these people going on carnivore diet, high fat, meat-based diet, meat only diet, and their diabetes goes away. No, meat causes diabetes. You just wait. In 50 years, you'll see. Like, okay, I'll be waiting for that chestnut. Thanks. Carnivore Scott says, my VA liver doc says I no longer have portal vein hypertension. Wow. So carnivore has reversed it. That's amazing. Portal venous hypertension is a very serious condition, and well, I'm just very glad that it's better, because that's a very difficult situation to be in. So that's amazing. I'm really glad to hear that, and hopefully others see that and maybe get inspired to give it a try as well, and hopefully they get helped as well, because that's pretty amazing. So great job. Thank you for sharing that. And this was a super chat from Kukwatsu. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm very sorry, but thank you very much for the super chat. Thank you, sir, for answering my questions. I think that was Melissa who actually answered the questions in the chat. So, well, thank you very much for the super chat. I'm glad that Melissa was able to help. A peaceful wolf retirement. I was thinking for months that my problem was from oxalate dumping, and now the lab said no, it's uric acid from too much animal products, red meat. Doctor said no. So uric acid doesn't go up because you're eating meat. It can go up eating purines like from livers or from organs and things like that. You can get that up. Uric acid can also go up for other reasons. One is keto adaptation. That's not something that everyone knows, but ketones and uric acid compete for elimination in your urine. And so you could actually track how keto adapted you are when you become fully keto adapted by your uric acid levels. So at first, basically everyone's uric acid levels are going to go up because you have excess ketones that your body's not utilizing properly. And so your uric acid will go up because your ketones are getting expelled in your urine as well. And so as you go, your ketone levels will get used more, and you'll have basically, this is what people notice when at first they have super high ketones and like, oh, this is great, I'm in ketosis. And then after a few months, they're like, oh, my ketones aren't that high, I'm not in ketosis anymore. What's going on? No, you are in ketosis. It's just now you're keto adapted. And so your body's using those ketones and much more efficiently. And so you're just not eliminating out. You don't have excess amounts because you're using them. And so you don't have to eliminate them. And so, and your uric acid comes down. So, no, so as far as oxalate dumping is concerned, I mean, it really depends on what the problem is, or if you're getting gout. There are 5 causes of gout. One of them is uric acid. One of them is oxalates. The only way to test is by stabbing a big honking needle into that horribly inflamed, swollen joint and taking an aspirin. And that's the only way to check. It's exactly the same presentation otherwise. But sometimes they'll just, oh, well, that's nasty, so we'll just check your blood levels. And they say, oh, uric acid's up. Must be gout, right? And must be uric acid gout. Well, no, not necessarily, because there is actually a very weak correlation between serum levels of uric acid and gout and uric acid gout. So people can have very high levels of uric acid, never get uric acid in their joints ever. And they can have very low levels of uric acid in their blood and get gout and get uric acid deposits in their joints. So it has to do with how your body metabolizes and uses and utilizes uric acid, not just how much is in your blood. And if you are having other sorts of symptoms that aren't gout related, then why would uric acid be causing that? Uric acid is one of the, if not the strongest antioxidant that your body makes. So it's actually not the worst thing on earth to have that. And so, you know, it's not apparent to me that your problem is uric acid. Everyone's going to have higher uric acid levels at first. It's a really good antioxidant. It goes up when you're keto adapting. It will go down when you're keto adapted. And again, weak correlation between uric acid getting into joints just by having elevated levels. So I would be, you know, it may not be oxalates. I mean, oxalate dumping gets blamed on a lot of things, but the oxalate dumping can actually manifest as pretty much anything in any tissue. So it's really hard to differentiate out that and something else. So I always think of oxalate dumping as sort of a diagnosis of exclusion. You know, think of other things and try to address those first and foremost. Try to optimize everything else. And if you're just eating, you know, fatty beef and water and everything's otherwise ship shape, and you're still having these problems, okay, well then you start thinking about oxalates. Maybe you add in a bit of low oxalate tea or something like that, and that settles it down. Great. You know, that's probably what was going on. And if it doesn't help, well, probably something else. Either way, very doubtful you're having a problem with uric acid, because uric acid is actually quite good for you. And, you know, and so, you know, I just doubt it. You know, it's, it gets blamed for a lot of things, and meat gets blamed for it too. You know, sugar, fructose, alcohol, those sorts of things, those actually raise uric acid, and those actually can precipitate gout and getting uric acid in the joints. So, you know, just eating, it doesn't come from eating meat. In fact, in the 1800s, that was the cure for gout, was putting people on a beef and water diet. Right? That was what Salisbury was doing for decades. And people after him, you know, carried that mantle and were using that. So I would doubt that anyway, but hopefully that helps. Chill Froyo, thank you very much for the super chat. On carnivore 4 months, lost 50 pounds, had DVT in leg and pulmonary embolism. On warfarin for 3 years now. And my INR blood work is too low, 1.6, should be 2 to 3. Could I be getting too much iron in beef that's causing this issue? No, it has to do with vitamin K. So warfarin knocks out vitamin K. You know, K1 and 2, you know, these are precursors for your clotting factors that are made in your liver. And so the way that it works is that warfarin basically blocks vitamin K from being turned into these clotting factors in the first place. So, it's really just a matter of adjusting your warfarin dose for whatever your diet is, and there are plenty of people on carnivore who are on warfarin as well, and it's actually much more consistent. They don't have the ups and downs. Because some people have a very difficult time correcting their warfarin dose because you eat different things on different days and have different amounts of vitamin K. And so if you're eating more vitamin K, you're going to need more warfarin. You're eating less, you're going to need less. And so, your INR is going to go up and down sort of crazily. And that's why some people need to check their warfarin every week or even twice a week just to make sure they're on the right dose. It's a real pain in the ass. And so if you're just eating a very consistent diet, which is just meat, then you're going to get a much more consistent, especially the same kinds of meats, you're going to have a much more consistent amount of vitamin K coming in, and you'll be able to adjust your dose much more. It will keep it much more regular, but you still need to get on the right dose. And so just keep working with your doctor. Your doctor will be able to keep bringing up, and you just have to keep titrating that dose up until you get into the right range. And I'm sure you'll be able to. There's plenty of people do. It's just sometimes it just takes a bit more finagling than other people. And but at that point, you should be able to just stay on the same dose and pretty much be good for quite a long time. And so good luck with that. But do work with your doctor and to get on the right dose. SRFSNW08. So don't know what that stands for, but thank you very much for the super chat. Hi, Dr. Chaffy. I have existing gallstones confirmed with ultrasound. I want to keep eating carnivore, but I get frequent gallbladder pain and bad attacks. What would you recommend? Well, the thing is that, first of all, do talk to your doctor and see, what's going on. And obviously if you have gallbladder attacks, or you have possibly an infection or a blocked stone, then that obviously needs urgent treatment. And so you need to work with your doctor on that. But as far as having gallstones in general and eating fat in general, when you have stones that exist and you eat fat, it's going to cause your gallbladder to contract, and that's going to expel bile so that you can digest and absorb and emulsify that fat and absorb it. And if you have stones getting in the way and they're sort of getting stuck and blocked, it's going to cause pain, and sort of crunching down on these stones, that can be quite painful. And so some people are able to pass these. If they're small enough, they'll be able to pass these and get through them. And some people are now reporting that they actually don't have any gallbladder pain anymore, and they don't have any issues anymore, and they don't have any stones anymore because their bodies either dissolve them or pass them through, more likely pass them through. But if these things are too big and they're not going to pass through, and they're not going to, we don't know if they dissolve or not. But if they're not able to do either of those things, they might get stuck. And so if they do get stuck, that could be a very serious emergency, and you will have to get a procedure done to get that blocked stone removed, potentially even have your gallbladder taken out, which hopefully you don't. But if you don't eat fat, what's going to happen is that bile is going to accumulate in your gallbladder. It's not going to get expelled at all. It's going to continue to concentrate. This is in physiology textbooks that it can concentrate up to 20 times what it comes out of the liver as. And what happens to any hyperconcentrated solution at rest? It forms precipitate, forms crystals, forms stones, right? And so that is, if you do eat the fat, you could get a blocked stone and you may need surgery. If you don't eat the fat, you will definitely grow your stones, and at some point you'll get a blockage and you'll need surgery. So it's sort of, where to go from there. It's really a personal choice. But for me, I think that it's still an advantage to get optimal nutrition, and you do still need the fat, and you do want to get the fat. And, as long as the stones are small enough, there is a chance that you can clear these things. And hopefully you do. If there's any concern or any problems, you go see your doctor right away, because if you have a blocked stone, that's an emergency, and you need to get that sorted out. So good luck with that. be very careful, but you can still eat a carnivore diet. And even if you have to get your gallbladder taken out, you can still do a carnivore diet after that, because your liver still makes bile. It's just you won't have a big gush of it at the time. So you can just split up your fatty meals throughout the day, so you can get maximal absorption. And I think we've cut off super chat at this point because we just have a lot of questions already. And and I only have probably about half an hour left at this point. So Darian Dumontier, We Solution It, has a question that says, my wife has just had a gallbladder stone episode, first one. She's been told by her doctor she should consider removing the gallbladder. She has been on keto. Would carnivore be better? High fat is going to still do the same thing when the gallbladder is concerned. It's going to start, expressing out that bile and use that to emulsify and absorb the fat. If so that shouldn't change unless she changes the amount of fat that she has. I think carnivore is better than keto anyway, just because you're getting rid of plant toxins and other sorts of fibers. Actually, digestive disruptor. It blocks out the absorption of a lot of things. It actually strips out bile. It's, oh, that's good. You want to get rid of that bile. No, you don't. Bile is actually really good for you. You make taurine in your liver. It's expressed in your bile, and you only absorb it again if you absorb that bile. So you can actually get taurine deficiency by eating fiber, even on a keto diet. And so that's not good. That's not what you want. And if you cook your meat, you're not going to get your taurine, because taurine is denatured when you cook meat. So, you want it, you need it. It is essential. We consider it non-essential because we make it, but we make it in the liver and we absorb it in the bile. And so it is essential. We do need it. It's just that we make it. But if you're taking a bunch of fiber and you're losing a lot of that bile, then no, you're not going to get enough taurine, and you will be deficient, and you will have a problem. A taurine deficiency is a problem. So, it's just like the last question. Potentially, she may need her gallbladder out. If she does, she can still do carnivore. She can still do high-fat keto. It just needs to be sort of split up throughout the day. And eventually she might form a pseudo gallbladder and be able to do more big meals one at a time, or in one go. But that remains to be seen if that's something that happens. And so, it just depends. She can always see how she goes with what she's doing. And if things settle down, then that's great. And if things get worse or just continue to be a problem, then she can always get surgery, with the caveat that sometimes if you do it electively, it's a much more straightforward procedure. You can do it through keyhole, sort of laparoscopic incisions. It's a lot safer, much less complications, and much lower complication rate, much less scarring and adhesions and all that sort of stuff, and less likelihood of infections and blockages and all these other sorts of things. Whereas if you wait until it is an emergency, sometimes there's an infection involved, it's very friable, there's a lot of pus and all that sort of stuff, and the tissue is just falling apart. And so you have a much higher risk of hitting a blood vessel, having a bad bleed, things like that. So it is definitely something to take under consideration and discuss the available options with her doctor. If her doctor's saying, look, this is really just, there's nowhere to go from here, maybe that's something to consider. If the stones are small enough and they think that there's a chance that these things can sort of pass on their own, that's something to consider. However, it's a trade-off, because if something does get stuck and it is an emergency, it's the higher complication rate. And when you get surgery as an emergency, as when you do as an elective. So that's something that should really be strongly considered with the advice from her doctor. So good luck to her, and good luck to you. Cam the Carnivore, thank you for the super chat. How much water do you recommend we consume, and do you yourself consume? I realize we haven't had access to water like this until now. Thank you for all you do. Well, we've typically congregated around water sources. And so when humans migrated, we brought water with us, and we tried to camp and make camp and civilizations around water sources, both for water and probably for food like fish and things like that as well. But we probably didn't drink water all day every day. Probably every now and then would just camel up, would just run by the creek or the river and just drink as much as we felt we needed to, and then move on for the day. So yeah, just having sips throughout the day, probably not necessary. I naturally have gravitated towards just the camel method of just drinking a lot of water in one go and then being good for the day, maybe drinking a bunch of water later. So I wake up in the morning and I maybe drink a liter of water, maybe two, and then I get on with my day. I may not actually drink much water until I get home that night. And then probably am a little thirsty, and so I drink a few more liters then. I don't really track how much I drink. I just go by thirst, and I tend to drink probably more water than other people do, maybe 4, 5, 6 liters a day. My deuterium tracking friends are horrified by this, but that's what seems to make me feel the best. And then so I go by thirst. If my lips are sort of dry and cracked, I think, okay, probably not getting enough water. If I'm getting leg cramps at night, it's, for me at least, it's always because I'm not drinking enough water, and I start increasing the water and those leg cramps go away. At this point, my electrolytes are well balanced. It's been 7 years. And so it's, I don't even salt meat anymore. I just, whatever's in meat I eat. And so that's what I do anyway. So, I sort of have this, this is my first liter of the morning, and I've just sort of, had a bit of it, but, I do feel thirsty. So, that's usually what I do. I usually go for the camel approach. There's some people that actually talk about that just having sips of water throughout the day actually isn't the best way to do it. I forget actually the argument as to why and what that did, but there did seem to be some sort of argument as to just drinking more in one time, but the same amount throughout the day actually seems to be better than just drinking small amounts throughout the day. Don't know, but for me, the camel method seems to work pretty well. So that's what I do. When I was growing up in wrestling, my glass was a 64-ounce big gulp, super big gulp glass from 7-Eleven. And so that's a half a gallon, or, a little over around 2 liters. So it's a big ass cup. And I would fill that up, and I would chug it down. I would fill it up again. I would chug it again. So I would drink a gallon at a time. And that's, because I was just working hard and sweating a lot, and I didn't have enough water throughout the day. I'd drink some of that in the morning, and then I'd drink that. I might drink like a gallon or 2 a day. And when I was playing rugby, I always felt best when I had like 2 gallons a day. I just felt amazing, had much better energy, felt much better athletically. I remember once I was out of shape. I sort of came in to the season sort of a month late. So I missed all the preseason stuff. And I was just basically my first week of practice. The first game was that weekend. I'm like, oh God, okay, I'm out of shape. I'm just going to make sure my hydration's on point. So I drank 2 gallons a day, every day for the week leading up to the game. I felt great. I had a great game. Had all sorts of energy running around. This was great. And so I was like, oh wow, I'm in better shape than I thought. Yeah, well, look at me. And the next week I sort of pulled off on it. I still drank water, but I only drank probably about a gallon a day because I wasn't on top of it. And the next game felt miserable. Had way less energy. Was just dragging myself around the field. I'm like, okay, I was definitely not in shape. That was just for the hydration. And so it seems to make a big difference for me anyway. So that's what I do. And my sister Rosalind says, yay, little boy is there. He is there. He was there. He's gone now. He left me, little bastard. But yeah, he had to go. He was getting bored in here. Frank Calabrese, thank you very much for the super chat. Carnivore, October 2003 or 2023. Angio mural thrombus, aorta, plaques, atherosclerosis, high blood pressure, 3 weeks on atorvastatin 80 milligrams, aspirin, perindopril, amlodipine, HDL high, LDL low, triglycerides low, ataxia, clots, cerebral, chronic ischemia. Quit, yes, no, thank you. No, I don't think that it would. You need to quit doing a carnivore diet. I think that optimal nutrition is most important when someone is dealing with very serious issues like this. Now your HDL being high is great. Triglycerides being low is great. HDL or LDL being low, that can go up or down depending on the individual. For me, it's high. I don't consider that high. I consider that physiological. I consider that exactly where my body wants it to be. In fact, people that are more slim, lower body fat percentage, and typically in better metabolic health seem to have higher LDL when on a ketogenic diet. So on the lean mass hyperresponder sort of things. But it's the people that are less metabolically healthy, maybe overweight, have a higher BMI. So however useful that is. But it's they seem to find that those people tend to have lower LDL. So in fact, higher LDL tracks with better metabolic health and better body composition, at least from that study. So no, I think it's a very good idea to optimize your nutrition. I think that optimizing your nutrition is one of the most fundamental things that we can do to support our health. And then we have all the different sorts of wonderful miracles of modern medicine with medications and surgeries and procedures and investigations that we can use to our advantage as well. But it starts with our own nutrition, how we care for our body. Your body is a temple. Don't put garbage into it. And so if you take care of your body will typically take care of you. And we have medicine and doctors and procedures to help fill in the gaps if there's anything else that goes wrong. But it starts and finishes with nutrition. Nutrition is the fundamentals of good health. And so having optimal nutrition, and I do believe that what we are biologically designed for, what our evolutionary diet is our optimal nutrition. I think that's the definition of nutrition for a species, is what that species has been eating for the longest period of time. It's pretty straightforward. And so if that's, if you're eating that, I think that you're going to optimize your health. Does that mean that everything's going to be reversed and go away? No, of course not. It just means that it's going to optimize your nutrition. And at least that won't be an issue, and your body can heal from a lot of things that an inappropriate diet would have caused. And what that means to you is just remains to be seen. But I think that you'll find that it actually really helps your condition and your situation in a lot of ways. And a lot of people are able to come off a lot of their medications, their blood pressure normalizes, things like that. So I would personally still recommend optimal nutrition for anybody at any time. Optimal nutrition is optimal. And so if you feel the same way, then that's something that you can try. But no, I don't think that you're doing anything wrong. I think a lot of people in your situation have improved significantly. So hopefully you do as well. Good luck. And obviously work with your doctors, because those are very serious medical conditions. RS, thank you very much for the super chat. Started carnivore March 26th after blood and urine tests. June 13th, tests show rise in bilirubin total from 1.0 to 1.3 and a trace of protein in urine. Is this something to be concerned about? Not necessarily. Sometimes people have elevated bilirubin for a number of different reasons. Gilbert's disease is a benign reason for higher bilirubin. If you're having pain or anything like that, maybe you're thinking about gallstone obstruction or something like that, or biliary tree obstruction that can back up the bile, that can back up bilirubin into your blood. And but then you typically get jaundice and other sorts of key features, itchy skin, all these sorts of things that can be indicating that you have a blockage of some form. So, if there's a concern, obviously see your doctor. I mean, your doctor got those blood tests and urine tests. So obviously, that's something that, they need to follow up on. But no, those can be completely benign. If you're not having any other symptoms, may not be anything else going on, but there could be something. So obviously you need to check up with your doctor. But carnivore diet won't damage your kidneys, and they won't damage your liver, and they won't cause jaundice on their own. If you have something else going on, like you're eating more fat, and so now a stone has come out and gotten lodged, that can cause a raise in your bilirubin, for instance. But that you would have other symptoms, like you'd be in pain, you would get jaundiced, yellow skin tint to your skin and your sclera of your eyes, things like that. So keep that in context. But if you're feeling well and everything's great and your doctor's not worried about it, then that's okay. But do double check and just make sure there's nothing else going on. So these blood tests are very hard to look at in isolation. You need to look at the whole clinical picture, the rest of your bloods and your symptoms as well. So just double check with your doctor, whoever put you in to get those tests, or if you ask for them to be done yourself, just double check with your primary physician and just make sure that they're happy with everything. And you can also just get a retest. It's sometimes you get these little fluctuations, and if they're otherwise okay and nothing else is a problem, doesn't really necessarily mean anything. And sometimes you check it again and it just comes right back down again. So sometimes you just get a blip on the radar, or even a lab error. So that's also something to think about. Swine Dog, thank you very much for the super chat. Hello, Doc. I'm a fan of the carnivore bars, especially for travel, and I make my own pemmican. I'm experimenting with different fat to protein ratios. Is there a specific percentage of fat you would recommend? Well, that's great. I definitely like the carnivore bars too. That was the major staple of my travel diet when I was going around all over the world. Literally circumnavigated the globe. Went from actually 1.5 times. So Perth to London and back. That was 24 hours each way, and then Perth to Austin, to Seattle, to Switzerland, back to Perth. So I actually circled the globe. And carnivore bars made up a big part of that. So because I wasn't getting much food that I wanted on the airplanes, and for 35 hours, I was just stuck there. And I just ate carnivore bars. That was it. Pemmican is great too. It's basically the same ingredients. It's just meat mixed with fat, isn't it? And it's great, and it's much more affordable to make your own. But if you can't, or you don't have the option to, then carnivore bars are great. As far as fat percentages, I mean, the typical ratio for pemmican would be dry weight, powdered, crushed up lean meat, powdered that, and mix that by weight 50-50 with rendered tallow. Grass-fed tallow is to be preferred for sure. And that, from what I understand, is 2 grams of fat to 1 gram of protein. And so that's 80% calories from fat. And I think that's probably the right ratio to go for. If you are finding that you're just not absorbing all that, and you're getting loose stools because of that, just kick it back. Just bring it back. Add a bit more lean meat to your tallow, and you'll get between 1 to 2 grams of fat. I wouldn't go less than 1 gram of fat to 1 gram of protein. So I would just go even ratio and then adjust from there. The carnivore bar is about 2 to 1 fat to protein, so by grams, and so that's 80% calories from fat. So that's what I would go for. That's what I'd aim for, and then adjust for you. And if that's not enough, add more fat. If that's too much, add less fat. And just see what you prefer and what works best for you. The Bush Rangian Order. Thank you for the super chat. Hi, Dr. Chaffy. I've got a few questions. Just wanted to let you know, firstly, that you can refer to me as Bushy rather than the Bushrangian order. Okay, well, good to know that, Bushy. I actually had a good buddy of mine named Bushy that played rugby with growing up. He was a Kiwi, and Steve Bush. He was a badass. Is a badass, and an absolute badass player. And he was on all the grooming teams for being an All Black back in New Zealand. And he had family that were All Blacks. Like his uncle was a prop, also named last name Bush. I don't know his first name though, but he's like just one of the great All Black props, and other family members All Blacks as well. So he came from a lineage, and he was being groomed up for it as well. And then he moved to Seattle and just really liked it there. And so I was fortunate enough to play with him as well. Yeah, Bushy's freaking great. But yeah, so good to meet you, Bushy. And thank you for the super chat. Maria Fila, thank you very much for the very generous super chat. It's very kind of you. Hi, Dr. Chaffee. My lifelong friend of 35 plus years, beautiful woman, has scleroderma. Do you think carnivore could help her? Thank you for all of the eye-opening information you provide. Well, yes, actually, it's some of these things are based in ketogenic studies that people have done on ketogenic diets, things like that. Others are just anecdotal. This would be in the anecdotal category, but yes, I've seen people with scleroderma improve on a carnivore diet. So a lot of these conditions that are have very unknown causes and just weird sort of reactions the body has, autoimmune issues, seem to be a reaction to an inappropriate diet from plant toxins or other sorts of things that our bodies are saying that does not belong in here, and it causes disruption in our physiology, biochemistry, and immunology. And I think scleroderma is one of those things. And so another thing to do, you can go into the older long-term carnivore Facebook groups like Zero Carb Health and Zeroing In on Health, and just look up in the search function there, scleroderma. These things have been up for 15, 20 years, and there's a lot of information on there. As you look up scleroderma, and you'll see a lot of other people, there's nothing that has happened to you that has not happened to someone else, and they've had those same questions. And so you can find those questions in the search functions in these older groups, and they're fantastic. So there's a very, very good resource, and just look up scleroderma, and you'll see a lot of people improve. And I hope that your friend is one of those people that improves as well. Good luck to her. Keith Kuseric, thank you for the super chat. Just popped an inguinal hernia. And will the carnivore diet help? I mean, that's a structural issue, right? So that's probably not going to be fixed without surgery, unfortunately. But a carnivore diet can certainly help recover from surgery. You're getting, just higher protein diets in general typically help wound healing and recovery. And if you're just, at any time, optimal nutrition is going to help your body do as well as it possibly can. But no, it's not going to repair the abdominal wall. Probably, it can help strengthen it, but and help you recover from surgery, and hopefully not have complications and things like that. But it's not going to repair the wall itself. So you probably will need surgery if it's, especially if it's bad enough. Sorry to hear that. That's really unfortunate. But I still think carnivore diet's a good idea to optimize your health going forward in general, and recovering from surgery if you do end up getting it. Good luck with that, Keith. Okay, Gunther SB, thank you very much for the super chat. This is my first month lion diet. I've never been vaccinated for HPV, but want to. If I get a vaccine too soon after starting carnivore, can it interfere with or limit the healing I may have otherwise had from the diet? No, I don't think so. I don't think that that's a problem. In fact, I think that you're on a carnivore diet, and that can actually help optimize your immune system. It does seem to help regulate the immune system. People with autoimmune issues seem to be able to reduce their auto antibodies and improve their symptoms without immune modulators. People have been using a carnivore diet since the 1800s to help with tuberculosis. Dr. Salisbury was doing that. And so, and in fact, pre-agricultural fossil records don't show signs of tuberculosis infections in the bones or the spines of people. We really only start seeing that after populations started moving to agriculture. So there's something to be said there as well. So no, I don't think that that's a problem. I don't think that will interfere with your carnivore diet experience and or the benefits thereof. And I don't think that being on a carnivore diet will interfere with the vaccine either. If you and so that won't affect it anyway. If you have a reaction to the vaccine, it's not going to be because of carnivore anyway. So I think that's that should be fine. So yeah, no, it's I can't see any problem anyway. I don't know of any anyway. So good luck. Our good friend Bushy back again. Thank you very much for the super chat. Have you looked at alpha-gal syndrome? Any solutions or thoughts on its origins and also treatment options? Well, the idea is that you're creating a sensitivity to or having a reaction to the saliva, some little toxin or whatever in the bite of a Lone Star tick, and that's causing you to react to one of the carbohydrates that typically appears on red meat or in red meat. And so you have a bit of a immune reaction to that. Whether we call that a true allergy, I don't know. And we were reacting to it negatively. This is not something we had too much experience with because it's not as common as all of that, but you can still eat meat. You can still actually do carnivore because, white meats don't seem to have the same, alpha galactose carbohydrate molecule that people seem to react to. It seems to be more on red meat. And so you still eat, chicken, fish, things like that, and possibly eggs too. But yeah, but there's the list anyway. You can look these up on the different meats that you can eat. And so you can still do it. You can still do carnivore, no problem. It's just you sort of have to avoid like the red ruminant meat. And but from what I've been told, and I don't know how accurate this is, but it's just something that I've been told by other clinicians who have dealt with this, is that A, you can eat other meats, so just do that. B, it typically only lasts about 6 months to a year. And so at some point you can go back to eating red meat as well. So it's not great, but it's not the end of the world. And it's from the sounds of it could be temporary anyway. And hopefully it is, because that would suck to not be able to eat steak again for the rest of your life and just be stuck on, peasant bird and just eating that the rest of your life. But, any port in the storm, and if you're you're still eating really good quality meat, then you're still going to be doing really, really well. So that's what I would do anyway. Hopefully, knock on wood, don't ever have to deal with that. But we'll see. There are workarounds anyway, and hopefully it's only temporary. Okay. Another one from Bushy. Thank you for the super chat. Can you please speak on the dangers of worms and other parasites, if any, when eating raw meats such as flukeworm? It depends on where you're eating them. If you're in a country that thoroughly tests these things, most Western countries do, they'll take samples from all the different processing plants. They'll send them off. They'll look for parasites. They'll look for bacteria. They'll look for contamination. And if there's any problems, they'll pull them. There haven't been any parasite, even in pork, in American pork, I think for like 25 years. I don't think there's been a single diagnosed case of trichinosis in farmed pigs in America in like 25 years. So it's something that is really checked very, very thoroughly. It's one of those things that people say, oh no, you should never eat meat. Oh, you have to cook it all the way, well done, lean as hell. I think that's just a way of getting people just to naturally not want to eat meat, because you get lean meat cooked, past the point of recognition. It just tastes horrible. As people say, oh, I just don't like meat. And that's because you didn't cook it right. You burnt the hell out of it and there's no fat on it. So of course you don't like it. I don't like it like that either. But that's not meat, So I actually cook meat. I sear it on the outside. I leave it pretty rare on the inside. Sometimes it's just full on blue on the inside. Medium rare at most. I really don't like anything past medium rare. It just doesn't taste good to me. And so I'm doing that in countries that that do check this stuff and are much more careful about it. And we have whole parts of our immune system that are involved in fighting off parasites, and parasites have whole parts of their defenses that try to elude our defenses. But so there's a back and forth. But I think that for the most part, for people in countries that test these things and check these things, you're pretty fine. You're pretty much okay. Wild game, that's when you need to start cooking things more well done, at least medium rare to well done, because it's parasites are a problem, and there are much more parasites in wild animals and wild game and things like that, whereas in farmed animals much less. So it just depends on where you're getting it. Wild fish, things like that, probably cook it all the way. Sashimi is very carefully prepared. There's certain ways that they prepare the fish so that it sort of kills the bacteria or the parasites, I should say, or gets them out of there. But you are sort of running that risk, especially with things like salmon. Salmon seems to have a higher. You don't just eat raw salmon, like the salmon sashimi from like a Japanese restaurant. They specially prepare that. There's ways that they can prepare it to counteract the parasites in there. So it just depends on what you're eating, where you're eating it. And if you have symptoms, and you're having GI upset and all these other sorts of problems, you might want to think about doing, getting some medication. It's usually pretty quick, like one pill or 3 days, one pill a day for 3 days. Usually pretty good after that. But if you're not having problems, you're not having any symptoms that you're worried about, and you're being careful in the quality of meat that you eat, I don't think that's probably as much of an issue as all that. So good luck. All right. Let's see here. Mama the Kawacha. I'm sorry again. There's been a few names today that I've not been able to get a handle on. So sorry about that, but thank you very much for the super chat. 4 weeks pregnant, ABLC, so something low carb / keto, AB, animal-based low carb / keto, but not strict carnivore. Well, then get out. No, just kidding. Need sources, study names, etc. to give my doctor when telling her I'm trying keto. Thank you very much. Well, I guess it depends on what sort of studies you're looking for. There are literally thousands of studies on ketogenic diets in general, animal-based ketogenic diets that animal-based ketogenic diets that are showing improvement for things like diabetes and other metabolic health issues, for weight loss, for all these different sorts of things. So there are a lot of different benefits. Epilepsy. We're studying that for 100 years. For ketogenic diets. So it just depends. So I don't know of any specific studies looking at ketogenic diets for pregnant women, but you can just point to the Inuit who have been on animal-based ketogenic diets for millennia, more than millennia, and they still have babies, and they don't have crazy birth defects and all these other sorts of things. India has some of the highest birth defect rates on earth, and they eat only 3 kilos of meat per person per year on average. So that's probably not helpful. And that's my wrap it up signal. So I don't know exactly what studies would be best for you to bring to your doctor, the ones that you're specifically looking for. If it's things on is it cholesterol and all these sorts of things being fine. One thing you can do, if there's something specific that you're looking for, you can just go onto like PubMed or even just Google Scholar, and you can just look up that issue, pregnancy, ketogenic diet. You'll find a lot of things. Or ketogenic diet, heart disease, ketogenic diet, diabetes, ketogenic diet, X, Y, and Z. And so you'll find a lot of those things. Anything that talks about a ketogenic diet, look for two things. One, how much carbohydrates are they actually restricting? If they're calling it a ketogenic diet or a low carb diet, what does that mean to them in that study? Because sometimes they say, it's a low carb diet and it's less than 200 grams of carbs a day. Okay. All right. So it's not really all that low. And one said this, it was a ketogenic diet, and it definitely was ketogenic. When we checked their ketones were up all the time. And how we kept them in ketosis, the fat we used was Crisco. So no, so obviously not. So anything using seed oils, anything using hydrogenated seed oils like Crisco, anything that doesn't actually have restrict carbohydrates below 20 grams a day, basically don't bother with them, because that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about animal-based ketogenic, not under 200 grams with Crisco, so that's something to look out for as well. And those ones, the animal-based fats with actual ketogenic levels of carbohydrates do fantastically well. And so those are the ones you want to look for as well. So hopefully that helps. Caleb Hetzinger, thank you for the super chat. Just started meat only 5 days ago. Feel really good. Acne is going away and I'm feeling very high energy. Any advice for dry mouth and trying to gain weight or muscle? 19 years old, 125 pounds, 5'10". Thanks. Well, dry mouth, drink more water. And first of all, that's great. I'm really glad that you're feeling good already. Acne is already starting going away. It's only been 5 days. That's amazing. You just need to eat meat. You need to eat a lot of meat. You need to eat until it stops tasting good. You do that at least twice a day. You're a growing boy, so you need to pack in the food, and you need to lift weights. Lift weights and sprint. Those are the best things you'll ever do for yourself. You get into a habit of lifting weights regularly, 3-4 days a week, sprinting, 3-4 days a week as well, at least 2-3 days a week. You're to exhaustion, to muscle fatigue with the sprints and the weightlifting, and you're eating enough, you're going to have fantastic results, and you're going to put on a lot of muscle. You're going to be very athletic, and you're going to feel amazing. And you keep doing that throughout your life. You do that through adulthood. You do that when you're 95, if you can. And if you're doing it all the way up until you're 95, you probably will be able to do it past 95. The less you do, the less you'll be able to do as you age. Remember that. And so it starts now, right now, whether you're 19 or you're 85, it starts right now. You can't start before. It's like there's the old saying, I think it's a Japanese proverb or maybe Chinese. It says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is right now. Okay. So the best time to start working out, lifting weights, eating properly, and doing sprinting was, as soon as you were walking, and really in the womb for eating meat. Second best time is right now. So so just eat a lot of fat, and eat until it stops tasting good, at least twice a day, 3 times a day if you need to, but at least twice a day. You get enough food until your body tells you to stop, until you get a bite that tastes like cardboard and you just say, not doing it anymore. That's when you're done. And you work out and you push yourself very hard. You'll put on muscle more easily than you have before. And once you start putting on more and more muscle, it'll get easier and easier and easier to do that. And but it's consistency. It's not gonna happen overnight. We're talking years to build up a decent amount of muscle mass. But eating this way and working out in that fashion will get you the best results as fast as possible. So good luck with that. And Bushy, thank you very much for the super chat again. Any thoughts on those with mesothelioma? Can changing the diet really combat that type of cancer? Somebody I know with late stage can't eat meat without causing a lot of pain in their liver area. Well, that might be something to do with their gallbladder. So it might be something to do with like stones or something like that. So that's something to get checked out with their doctor. Maybe get an ultrasound, see what's going on there. Mesothelioma, that's a difficult one because that's a very aggressive form of cancer, and so but these cancers, all known cancers behave in a similar way. They have the same physiological characteristics, which is they don't they don't go through oxidative phosphorylation, and so they have to go through substrate level fermentation, and so they require far more glucose to run than normal cells, about 400 times the amount of glucose. So even though you make glucose, you're still not. It's better to not jack up your glucose way higher and just pour gas on the fire. The amount of glucose that you make isn't enough to run at full steam for these cancers, and so it's just doing any sort of ketogenic diet is going to be a good idea. Watch my interview with Professor Thomas Seyfried, Seyfried. He is one of the premier cancer researchers. He has over 150 peer-reviewed publications on ketogenic metabolic therapy and cancer. Get the GKI low, get the blood glucose low, get the ketones high with a combination of diet and potentially fasting or calorie restriction if you need to. Can't let them lose too much weight. You need to be able to go do refeeds and keep lean body mass at a good healthy level. Those are all some of the principles that Dr. Seyfried talks about and has published on, and you can find a lot of his publications on there. I'm actually working with as part of his team. My contribution is very minimal, but we're about to publish a large protocol on ketogenic metabolic therapy and how to deal with various cancers and things like that. So it's quite comprehensive. It's quite long, and so when that comes out, check that out as well. But I don't imagine that mesothelioma would act in any sort of different way either, even though it's a very aggressive, nasty form of cancer. So good luck to your friend. Do check out the gallbladder with their doctor and see if there's anything that can be done there. And just good luck. Either way, look up ketogenic metabolic therapy and just get rid of the carbs and the sugar because that feeds cancer. Plain and simple. That's just all there is to it. That's a start and stop, is that feeds cancer. So, avoid that and good luck. And we have some super chat or super sticker from Low Carb Low Drama. Thank you very much for that. Another super sticker from Heather Keys. Thank you very much for that as well. And there's something from Changel Thomas Jones. I think that was a previous super chat. It was HDL 2.1, LDL 13 on high fat lamb diet. Kindly advise. I really appreciate it. Well, you look at your triglycerides, look at your insulin, fasting insulin, look at your HbA1c, look at your other metabolic markers, and watch the different lectures and read the studies talking about this sort of relationship where if you're metabolically healthy, that you'll see high HDL, which you have. You'll see low triglycerides, which I'm assuming you may well have. And your LDL can fluctuate depending on your metabolic health. And people that are more metabolically healthy, more slim, tend to have higher LDL levels. So it's not necessarily something that's bad. It could be something, at that level, could be, familial hypercholesterolemia. And, we've had exactly the same amount of people having familial hypercholesterolemia back in the 1800s as we do in the 1900s. And yet the mortality rate and heart attack rate went through the roof in the 1900s. And didn't really exist in the literature at all in the 1800s, at least not in America. So, something to think about as well. And I have a YouTube video called The Truth About Cholesterol and Heart Disease. Dr. Paul Mason has a number of lectures online that you can watch as well. Dr. Seema Holtra is a cardiologist in the UK, and he wrote a book called A Statin-Free Life, where he talks about these sorts of issues as well. And so that's what I would look at as well. And then there's one more super chat that didn't sort of get put up, but I'll read it out to you. It's from Nav. Thank you very much for the super chat. Day 40 carnivore, no caffeine, get solid stool in the AM that leaves streaks in the toilet, and then a few loose stools during the day. Not sure how to adjust fat because I get both loose and solid stools. Typically, if it's very hard and dry and craggly, and then you're getting liquid stools around that, you could get what's called overflow diarrhea, which is you're getting sort of half blocked up. And so the liquid stool from the small intestine is sort of squirting around the outside of that. So you're getting liquid diarrhea, and then every now and then you get this boulder that comes out. And if that's the case, then you need to eat a lot more fat because you're actually quite constipated. And so you're actually sort of slowing things down enough that it's sort of getting stuff's having to squirt around the sides because it's not able to push it down and out. So if that's the case, then probably eat a lot more fat and see how you go, clear everything out, and hopefully it'll just be nice, soft, normal stools after that. And that's typically the pattern that you see. So again, it's a U-shaped curve. So too little fat, you get loose stools because of the overflow issue. And if you get you're only really just getting protein at all, then you sort of get more of a protein poisoning sort of situation where you'll get loose stools as well. But before that, you'll get this sort of pattern where you get hard, dry, rocky stools, and every now and then sort of liquid stools as well. And then you get enough fat, and that sort of settles that down. And then you get too much fat, or not too much fat because it's not harmful to you, but a lot more fat than your body can absorb. And then it's coming out, and it's got to go somewhere. And it's not getting absorbed, so it's got to go out the other way. So that's what I would suggest. Probably eat more fat and see how you go. That's what it sounds like. Okay, I've got to run. I've got an appointment in about 10 minutes, so I've got to get out of the house. So thank you all very much. I really appreciate you coming on. It's good to see everybody after being gone for a few weeks for all the conferences and things like that. So thank you all for joining. Thank you all for the super chats, and thank you all for the participation in the comments and helping each other and talking and hopefully I'm making this an entertaining time. So, and we end on stools. Yes, we do. Seems to be a common theme. That seems to be something that people have questions about a lot. So thank you all very much. Really appreciate it. And I will see you next time.